3 days before Jesus was put to death, his disciples posed a question that has great importance for all of us today. They asked Jesus, "What will be the sign of your presence and of the conclusion of the system of things?" In reply, Jesus foretold that a time period preceding the promised new world would be marked by events such as wars, earthquakes, food shortages, and pestilence. Jesus then said, "For as they were in those days before the flood, eating and drinking, men marrying, and women being given in marriage, until the day that Noah entered into the ark, and they took no note until the flood came and swept them all away, so the presence of the Son of Man will be."
How you doing, guys? We've all known those little kids that were afraid of the dark. They go off to bed. You're sitting in the living room watching TV. Everything's fine because they can hear the TV while they're in bed and the hall light is still on. But what happens? You're tired, you go off to bed, you turn off the TV, turn off the hall light, and before you know it, the kid's calling you. So you go in, what's the problem? "I want a glass of water." You know the kid doesn't want a glass of water. He could have got up and got his own glass of water. But you go get the kid the glass of water, and he will do everything he can to keep you there. So finally ask, what is the problem? "There's something in my closet." Your clothes are in your closet. "No, it's moving." So what do? You go up to the closet and you look in there. A little hesitant sometimes. Maybe he did see something moving. But you open up the door and you move the clothes. No, nothing's in here. And you think you got them convinced, but they're just, Well, what's the problem? "It's under the bed. I just heard it." Oh, there's nothing under the bed. But you have to assure this kid. You go down on the ground and, come here. "No, I don't want to look." "Come down here." Well, you get the kid to look under the bed, and there's nothing under there. But you know as soon as he gets back up on top of there, he's going to realize, no, it's down there. Well, you try to reason with this kid. Don't you think if there was something under the bed, that the dog would bark at it? "Well, she was trying to get under there a while ago." All dogs try to get under the bed. Well, this goes on quite frequently, at least once or twice a week, until the kid gets older. You take it with a grain of salt because you went through the same thing when you were a kid, and you kind of get a chuckle out of it. What scared you when you were a kid doesn't scare you now. It is kind of funny. Eventually that kid grows up, and you even want to point that out when they get older. "That never happened." "Oh, yes, it did." And they forget about it. Fears change as they get older. But here's a scenario. What if you indulged in that little kid? What if you convinced him, yes, the boogeyman is in that closet. There is a thing living under your bed. And what if you fed that to this kid this whole life as he's getting older and older and older? You would not let this kid talk to anybody else. That would kind of deter that fear. But you would convince this kid, I am the only one that can protect you from that thing under your bed. But you keep his friends away. You keep everybody away. And what have you got? When this kid grows up, you've got one of Jehovah's Witnesses. Let's face it, we all know the childish scare tactics that Watchtower has used. I never realized this till I started studying. And as a matter of fact, at the time, I still didn't see what was going on. One of the first accounts I heard of was, of course, the account of Noah's Ark. Watchtower loves to go to that card all the time. They like to compare themselves to the modern day Noah's Ark. The word obedience they push constantly. You've got to be obedient. Whatever they tell you, you've got to obey, obey, obey. Shortly after I started studying, there was another scenario that I had heard about. The account of Korah. Let's face it, now you've got one account, the account of Noah's Ark. You have to obey if you want to survive. Then they shove Korah at you. You cannot question. If you question anything in the organization, you are now compared to Korah. Think about that. Korah was a rebel. He was rebellious. Questioning something does not make you rebellious. But this is something I noticed watching this year's regional convention, Powerful by Faith. They went to the well one too many times. They went with what they know worked. Let's face it, year after year, the conventions, the circuit assemblies, there was never anything new. It was just the same BS that was redressed. This time it was much simpler, especially now since it's online. But they kept going to that one card, obey, obey, obey. And what better person than Aunt Mo to give a scare talk to? One of the earliest talks I remember was his weenie roast talk. And I remember that talk and I'm thinking, what a dick. But I realized at the time that anybody who had served in the military and had seen action would not go into the detail that he did. But his purpose for that talk was to scare them. Scare Jehovah's Witnesses, scare the little kids there. Get them all thinking that if they don't get on the modern day Noah's Ark, they're going to get roasted like that Oscar Mayer. Had no respect for that fat bastard from that point on. And he did the same thing with this talk. He did the same thing blowing out the match. And frankly, it doesn't work. Jehovah's Witnesses, are you not seeing this? Are you not understanding that you're not powerful by faith? You're weakened by fear. Here's the other thing that very few of you are realizing. That you've got so reliant on listening to Watchtower. What are you going to do if they pull the plug and vanish? The thing is, when little kids are growing up, parents are there for them. But eventually, they're off their own. They have to learn to take care of themselves. As one of Jehovah's Witnesses, you never get off your training wheels. You can never let go because they keep you constantly, totally reliant on them, feeding you scare tactics, getting you totally afraid of that thing in the closet, the thing under the bed, the big bad wolf. Constantly afraid of the big bad wolf. Now, we all know Watchtower likes to compare the world of ungodly people in Noah's time to anybody today that is not in your organization. And that is not the case. They have you totally terrified of anybody who's left the organization, anybody who's not in. The people whose doors you used to knock on the outside, you would never even speak to, unless, of course, it was to give a magazine. They're all dead people. But one day, Watchtower's not going to be there for you. And the problem when you take a little kid by the hand constantly and you let them go, they're lost. They don't know what to do. And you can say, well, we'll rely on Jehovah. I got news for you people. Your God is Watchtower. And if they're not there, you're going to be lost little kids running around in circles. And while you're afraid of everybody outside of the org, and you're all sitting in that little circle, totally afraid for your lives, think about one scenario. While the sheep are very wary of the big bad wolf, and the wolf might get away with one or two sheep, it's always the shepherd that leads those remaining sheep to the slaughterhouse. And that's exactly where Watchtower is leading you. And that's something I want to go on to further down the line next time. But that's all I wanted to mention, and that's all I wanted to bring across. You guys have a good day. I'll be talking to you soon.